That was fun stuff, especially in the snow. See, I grew up in Minnesota, and the vast majority of NFL players came from the South. At least 3/4 of the guys are from the South, probably a higher number than that, and they are so afraid of snow and cold and all that. Just slap them in the hands once and they're done for the day. I saw a lot of crazy plays in 25 years of playing football. 25 years of football in the snow, in the fog, in the rain, in the mud. But the craziest play I ever saw on a football field actually happened on a dry field. It was early in my career. Seattle Seahawks were in town. And early on in my career, I didn't play very much. I was just a third down pass rusher and a special teams player. And most of the time I was standing on the sidelines, and this play was no different. I'm standing on the sidelines, and I'm standing next to the ball boy. And ball boys in the NFL are usually 19 or 20 years old. This kid was 13 tops. This was the son of the general manager. This was Chip Beek, John Beek's son, and he was so excited to be there. This is his first time to be the ball boy, and I know he'd been bothering his dad for years to have this opportunity. And even though it's a perfect day like it is today, he had the ball out, and he had his towel, and he's polishing the ball, and this play unfolded right in front of us. Seattle's old left-handed quarterback, Jim Zorn, pitched the ball back to their running back, a guy named Kurt Warner, and Kurt started running a sweep towards our sidelines, right at me and Chip. Now, Dennis Smith was our strong safety at this time, and Dennis was a big hitter. And Dennis came up out of the secondary and hit Kurt Warner the way only Dennis could hit somebody. And Kurt went flying to the north, and the ball kept rolling west towards our sidelines, right at me and Chip. And when there's a fumble on an NFL field on a Sunday afternoon, it attracts a stampede of men, my size and bigger, running as hard as they can at that ball, and they're charging right at Chip, and Chip panicked. And as he turned to run away, he dropped that ball he had just been polishing. It hit him on the heel, and it rolled out on the field about 10 feet from the other football. As you can imagine, this was a problem. Tom Jackson was our weak side linebacker. You probably know him from ESPN, but he was our weak side linebacker at that time. The call in the huddle had been a will shoot, which means the weak side linebacker is blitzing. When you're a weak side linebacker and you're blitzing, the first thing you got to do is you get up as tight as you can to the line of out just a hair so you can clear the backside of that big offensive tackle and just watch the ball. And as soon as the ball moves, you get upfield as deep as the football, as deep as a quarterback. You check for bootleg, which is a quarterback faking away from you and spinning back to you. You check for reverse, which is a wide receiver coming back against the grain. And you follow the ball and you look for a fumble. Well, Tommy did his job just right. Got through the line of scrimmage, check bootleg, check reverse, was the first one of the big scary guys to get on top of the ball, and everyone else piled on top of him the way they always do. Steve Largent was also involved in this play. Steve Largent's a Hall of Fame wide receiver from Seattle, a great man, a Christian man, a guy I've got all kinds of respect for. Was actually a senator for his home state of Washington or for his home state of Oklahoma after he retired. And Steve was out there doing what Steve did best. He's only about this tall, and for some reason he thinks he can block linebackers, and he runs into you, and you throw him out of the way, and zip, he's back on you like a little gnat. He's out there doing that thing. You heard the big hit. Everyone in the stadium heard the hit. You heard our sidelines yelling, ball, ball, ball. It's what you do when there's a fumble. It's not too smart. It tells the other team there's a fumble too, but it's what we do. So he turns around, he sees a pile of guys and a ball lying next to it, Chip's ball. Right, so he runs over there and gets on that ball. Some guys from this pile get off and pile on top of him. The ref was also involved in this play. The ref had seen everything. The big hit, the fumble, Tommy get on that ball, Chip panic, the other ball roll out, Largent get on that ball, guys switching piles. And he ran up next to both piles and said, Broncos ball. Well, like I said, Largent's a Christian man, but he came out of the pile with the ball and held it right in the ref's face and said, how can it be the Broncos ball? I have the blankety blank blank ball. It's a funny story, but there's a reason I tell it. Success doesn't happen by accident. It's not going to bounce off of somebody's foot and roll to you. There's a pattern. There's a template to success that I describe as my 6 keys to success, and those are the things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about teamwork, with leadership being the ultimate expression of teamwork. Courage, the courage to try new things, the courage to be decisive. Dedication, which is hard work, constant learning, refusing to quit. Desire, that's the dream, the passion, the mission. Honesty and forgiveness with yourself and self-evaluation and with others. And finally, goal setting. Reasonable, short-term, specific steps that get you to those desires, those passions, those missions. So most of that highlight video you saw was under the head coaching direction of Dan Reeves. Dan was my coach for 9 years. And Dan had his finger on the pulse of the team. He understood when we'd reached a plateau, when we weren't progressing the way he expected us to. And about once a year, usually after a loss, but sometimes after a win, he'd call us all together as a team and sit us down. And in his Georgia drawl, he'd say, now, man, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You can't stay the same. Dan said a lot of things I'm still trying to figure out, but I understand that. Change is inevitable. It's going to happen. And anybody who's lived through 2020 understands change is inevitable. It's going to happen. And even if you avoid it, even if you eventually you're going to have to change. The thing that Dan made clear to us is that change is vital for improvement. You can't have improvement without change. So how are you going to take a step forward without change? And we all avoid it. I mean, I'm a prime example. I remember I had a cell phone thing where I had that flip phone. Remember the flip phones, right? I had the cell phone, the flip phone, and everybody else was getting the fancy new phones, the iPhones, and the smartphones. And I spoke at the Global Summit in the Global Speaker Summit in South Africa, and we took a photo safari beforehand. I brought my family with. We went on this. It was cool, right? You ride in the back of the trucks, and they've got risers in the back of the trucks, and the guides drive you around in these pickup trucks. And when they find something cool like a hippo or a crocodile or a lion or whatever, they call each other on their cell phones. And our Zulu guide, a guy named Philemon, pulled out his phone, and it was the exact phone as mine. Exact same phone. That's when you know it's time to upgrade. When they got your phone in the book. So I upgraded that's me. I have a hard time with change. But I know the need for it. And hopefully you will too by the time we get done with this. So I never played linebacker in my life until my third year in the NFL. I was always a lineman. I was a defensive lineman, and as a kid, I was a defensive tackle. I was a defensive end. I was a nose guy. I moved around, but I was always a lineman. The lineman's got his hand on the ground. His focus is real tight. He's just staring at the ball, or he's staring at the guy lined up across from him. That's all he sees. Where a linebacker, the linebacker's up. The linebacker's on the balls of his feet. He's got to go that way, just like that defensive lineman, but he's also got to go that way, that way, that way. And he's got to see the whole field at once, because this guy's just staring at the ball. And if anything changes in the backfield, he's got to tell him something's changed. So the coaches came to me early on in my career and said, Karl, we love what you're doing as a third down pass rusher and a special teams player, but we think you can help the team more if you switch to linebacker. Like I said, a very different job. And I'd already seen players get their position changed and then get fired. A lot of times it's the first step out the door. But I believed in myself, I believed in my coaches, and I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'll switch to linebacker. Went to training camp as a linebacker. Practice as a linebacker, meetings as a linebacker. Game time came, I was still a third down pass rusher and a special teams player until the 10th game of that year. 10th game of that year, the Raiders were coming to town. I'm glad no one cheered. Thank you for that. The Raiders were coming to town. And I was going to get to start. Our starter had gotten hurt that week in practice, and so I was going to play. I'd never stepped on a game field as a linebacker in my life. And I got out there, and things were happening fast at first, but I prepared. I knew what to do, and I started making plays. I actually had that big hit you saw in the highlight video when I hit Marcus Allen and knocked him out. The Fox television program listed that as one of the top 10 hits in NFL history. I didn't even know what I was doing yet, but I was a linebacker. There was no question about that. I played 5 more games as a linebacker. The 6th was the Pro Bowl as an All-Pro linebacker. Have the courage to try new things. I believe God's given each and every one of us more potential, more possibility than we can use in a lifetime. But along with that, we've got free will. That means we've got to have the courage to try new things, to step out of our comfort zone, to embrace change, and have the courage to try something new. So we're going to do a change exercise. Everybody's got their exercise book, hopefully. Obviously, COVID has forced everybody to change, just day-to-day activity. You know, everybody's spread out. If you've been in this room before, but usually it's 100 chairs are in here at least, where they're just lined up to get from one row to the other. You got to go through these little side things to get out. Change. We've all faced it. So as you see, changes in the last 6 months, both personal and business changes, and then how these changes could ultimately prove positive. Because I believe there's always an opportunity in change. Regardless if it seems like a negative change, there's always opportunity to take a step forward when change happens. So spend some time, think about what's changed and how you can picture down the line how somehow that's going to be a positive thing. Anything that suddenly came to mind as far as how change can be positive? Nothing that's even though it's possibly negative change in your mind when you start it? Yeah, what do you got, Deb?
Well, I'm just curious if did you used to use this exercise before the pandemic, and how has that changed this activity? Because, I mean, all of us are living through, we have this commonality, but I have to guess that a year ago I wouldn't have had the uncertainty now is something that I never experienced before.
For the live stream, the question is, how has this changed since the pandemic because of the uncertainty? I apologize, I forgot to say that the remote audience can't hear you if we're not using the microphone, but we can't pass it around due to COVID. So I will repeat your questions. I'm sorry to have
Laura
to repeat
is the
that.
interpreter.
But I will repeat the question for the audience. Actually, Deb was much more articulate, but that was a summary question for Karl. Over to you, Karl.
Yeah, so the question, have I used this exercise before? No. Have I lived through this many times? Yes. As a professional football player, I've had 18 football-related surgeries. And in every single situation, I was concerned that my career was over. You know, this is the end of it. I've had 10 knee surgeries. Everybody's getting ready for the next season. I'm getting surgery. I'm on crutches. I'm in the training room. And instead of wallowing in, oh no, what's going to happen with my life, what I concentrated on is what I could affect. What could I do? I could be the model rehab patient. And I was. I would make sure I did everything I possibly could to get ready. I could make connections in that training room and in that locker room with players that I normally hadn't connected with. See, I don't know how it works at Allied Control or the other businesses that are represented here, but there are cliques in teams. There are, and it's just natural. The black guys hung out with the black guys, the old guys hang out with the old guys, the white guys hang out with the white guys, the defense hangs out with the defense, the offense hangs out with the offense. That's how it works. It's just because it's convenient. It's not a racial thing. It's not an age discrimination thing. It's a just life thing. So what I decided to do was make connections across these lines that are invisible lines, but they're lines nonetheless. And make connections and develop friendships and understand where these guys are coming from and allow them to understand where I was coming from. And I'd come out of each of those situations, each of those injuries with 3 or 4 different connections that I didn't have before. And as a team captain, as a leader, this was invaluable. And I didn't really have the time, or I didn't make the time beforehand, but I definitely had the time when I was rehabbing and getting ready. So there's always something positive that can come out of a negative situation. So for me, this exercise makes a lot of sense, particularly with COVID going on, but in everybody's life, there's ups and there's downs. And when there's downs, that's when you focus on what you can do, what you can concentrate on, how you can take that thing and move it back forward. So that was my approach to that. So we talked about change. We talked about the 6 keys to success. Talked about courage to try new things. Now we're going to get to courage to be decisive. I run a 4.9 40. For those of you who don't follow football, that's slow. I'm not too slow to play football. I was a 310th pick of the NFL draft based on my 40 speed. Now, I would present to you that if you're a defensive tackle or defensive end like I was, if I had to run 40 yards, we were in huge trouble anyway. But that's not the way they look at it. So I came in with this handicap. I'm slow in 40 yards. But I realized early on in my career that if I could take the first step in the right direction before anybody else did, all the angles would change in my favor. The tight end couldn't pin me in. The guard couldn't cut me off. The fullback couldn't keep me from getting to the line of scrimmage. Everything changed if I just took that first step. And that's not just on the football field. That's in business. That's in relationships. Let me say it again. If you can take the first step in the right direction before anybody else does, all the angles change in your favor. Did you notice when I gave my keys to success, I didn't say talent? We've all got talent. The question is, are we going to use it? Do we allow ourselves to be decisive and take that step when it's time to take that step?